My best friend betrayed me. But when things started going well, he erased my name from the company, stole everything, and left me with nothing. You will not believe what I did next. I was 25 when Jake and I started the business. Two broke kids from the same rusted-out neighborhood, trying to turn an idea into something real. He had the charm, I had the vision. Together, we made one hell of a team, or at least, that is what I thought. We called it LevelForge, a small tech startup focused on workflow automation for small businesses. Fancy words, but really, it just meant we were helping the little guys compete with the big boys. I built the prototype in my garage, using duct-tape servers and a laptop that ran hotter than a July sidewalk. Meanwhile, Jake was out there pitching to clients, getting us in the door. And for a while, it worked. It more than worked. We landed a few contracts, got a decent office above a sandwich shop, even brought on a couple interns who looked at us like we were the next Steve and Woz. I felt proud more than that. I felt alive. Every long night, every empty ramen cup stacked in our trash can, it all felt worth it. We were building something from nothing. Then came the weird moments. Little things. Jake started leaving me off emails with potential investors. Clients would mention conversations I had no clue about. One night, I found a version of our pitch deck on his laptop that had my name scrubbed from every slide. Said it was for simplicity when I asked him. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. But that was just the beginning. The moment that cracked the surface was subtle. I stayed late one night, going through the books while Jake was out networking. Found some expenses that made no sense, steak dinners in cities we had never traveled to, payments to consultants I had never met. At first, I figured it was sloppy bookkeeping. I even blamed myself. But when I tried to talk to him about it the next day, he brushed me off. Told me not to worry about things I did not understand. Those words stuck. Not because of what he said, but how he said it. Like I was some kid tagging along while he ran the show. Still, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. But that was my mistake. Because the next thing I found would make me question everything we had built. I should have walked away that night. Should have trusted my gut. But when you build something with someone, truly build it from nothing, it is hard to believe they would ever turn on you. I went back through the financials. Line by line. I stopped sleeping, barely ate. Just sat hunched over spreadsheets and transaction logs while the office lights buzzed overhead. And that is when I found it. A payment, large enough to make my stomach drop, wired out to a company I had never heard of. Greystone Consulting. Sounded legit. But the address listed? It was Jake's old apartment. Same zip code, same street number. Just a different name on the mailbox. It hit me all at once. He had made up a shell company. A fake business. And he was billing our startup through it, getting paid twice. Once from the clients, once from us. And I had been too blind to see it. I felt sick. Betrayed. Embarrassed. How could I have missed it? Still, I did not confront him right away. I needed proof. I started printing everything, bank statements, invoices, fake contracts. Made a whole binder out of it. I even took photos of the mailbox at that fake address. No sign of any Greystone Consulting. At that point, I had one thought running through my head. Get out before it is too late. But it was already too late. One afternoon, I showed up early. Office was quiet. I heard voices in the conference room and figured it was just a client call. It was not. Jake was in there with two guys I had never seen. They were going over numbers. Not just any numbers, my numbers. My ideas. My code. My mock-ups. One of them asked, "So you built all this yourself?" Jake laughed and said, "Pretty much. My partner helped with a few early drafts, but I took over most of it." Partner. That word used to mean something. Now it felt like a blade pressed against my throat. I did not go in. I just stood there, behind the frosted glass, watching my best friend erase me like I never mattered. And that was not even the worst part. Later that day, I tried to log into our shared accounts, email, banking, client portals. All of them were locked. Passwords changed. Access revoked. That was when I realized the real plan. Jake was not just stealing from me. He was trying to erase me. I sat in my car outside the office for almost 2 hours that night. Just parked there in the dark, engine off, hands on the steering wheel. I did not even realize I was crying until I tasted salt on my lips. All that time, all those years, every brainstorm at midnight, every cup of gas station coffee, every time I picked up Jake's slack and told myself he was just going through it, it all collapsed in one day. And the sickest part? He had planned it. Not like some spur-of-the-moment thing. No, this was slow, deliberate sabotage. I found out later he had been laying the groundwork for months. setting up meetings without me, whispering in investor ears about how I was struggling with burnout, telling people I was stepping away. He was rewriting history while I was still living it. I went back to the apartment that night. Well, more like the shoebox I called home. Sat on the floor with that thick binder of documents in front of me, wondering what to do next. I could fight him, sue, take it to court, but I did not have the money for lawyers, and Jake had already charmed half the startup community in our city. I would look like a bitter failure trying to tear down the golden boy. I had nothing. No job. No reputation. My name was not even on the updated LLC paperwork anymore. Jake had left just enough for me to survive, like tossing crumbs to a dog he used to own. But he miscalculated something. He thought I would break. Instead, something in me started to burn. Not the kind of fire that explodes. The slow kind. The one that simmers in your gut and turns everything into fuel. That was the night I called Reese. We had met once at a pitch event. He was a mentor type, older guy with sharp eyes and a reputation for helping underdogs rise. I did not know what I was expecting, just knew I needed someone to believe me. Someone to listen. He picked up on the second ring. I told him everything. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Meet me tomorrow. 8 a.m. Bring everything." And just like that, the game reset. But this time, I was not building for us. I was building for revenge. Reese did not say much that morning. He just flipped through the binder I handed him while sipping black coffee like it was fuel. Every few pages, he would nod or mutter something under his breath. But mostly, he just read. When he closed it, he looked me straight in the eye and said 5 words that hit harder than anything Jake ever said. "You got royally screwed, kid." Then he stood up, grabbed his coat, and told me to follow him. I had no idea where we were going. I barely had time to grab my phone before we were outside, and he was already unlocking the passenger door of his Jeep. The man moved fast, like every second was money. He took me to this nondescript co-working space downtown. Nothing fancy, just concrete floors, glass cubicles, and a smell like printer toner and energy drinks. He pointed to a small corner office with a busted chair and said, "That is yours." I stood there, confused. Reese tossed my binder on the desk and added, "If you want to rebuild, you start here. No more sharing. No more partners. Just you and the truth." That was the moment I decided I was all in. We called the new company Stratlight. It had none of the flash LevelForge did. No fancy launch party. No press. Just code, coffee, and a quiet rage driving me forward. The first few weeks were brutal. I barely slept. I coded until my fingers hurt. Reese connected me with people who had burned Jake before, folks I never even knew he had wronged. Turns out, I was not the only one. One former intern told me Jake made him sign an NDA just to delete old prototypes with my name on them. Another guy from a rival startup said Jake had stolen pitch slides and pitched them as his own at a VC event. It all painted a clear picture. Jake was not just a thief. He was a professional leech. But I stayed focused. Did not post online. Did not try to clear my name on social media. I just worked. Because I knew the only thing stronger than revenge was results. And then, out of nowhere, came our first break. An angel investor Reese knew had backed out of a contract with Jake because she had seen my prototype. I did not even know how she got her hands on it. Reese just smiled and said, "People talk." 2 weeks later, I landed our first client. It was the same company Jake had once bragged about ghosting, said they were too small to be worth his time. And let me tell you something, nothing feels better than getting paid by someone your enemy disrespected. But just when I thought things were starting to turn around, I got an email from Jake. The subject line? Just one word. Talk. I stared at that email for a long time. Just the word talk, sitting there like it meant nothing. No apology. No explanation. Just a question from a man who set my life on fire and wanted to pretend it was a conversation starter. I did not reply, but I read it again the next morning. And the one after that. Part of me wanted to lash out. Send him the binder. Send him screenshots. Hell, send him a mirror so he could stare into the eyes of the man who gutted his best friend for a paycheck. Instead, I did something worse. I ignored him. That silence? It must have eaten him alive. Over the next 2 weeks, he sent 5 more messages. All short. All pathetic. Can we meet? Let's clear the air. Things got messy. Like we were exes who had just argued over pizza toppings. He never once took ownership. Never once admitted what he did. Meanwhile, Stratlight was gaining traction. I had 2 paying clients and a third in negotiations. My inbox was finally buzzing for the right reasons. Reese pushed me harder than anyone ever had, but he also made sure I stayed grounded. Do not let this become about beating him, he told me once. Let it be about building something so strong, he cannot touch it. I wanted to believe that. But deep down, I wanted him to choke on every bite of his stolen success. Then one night, around 2 a.m., I got a call from an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. Something told me not to. I answered. And there it was, Jake's voice, muffled, shaky. He was drunk. Said he was thinking a lot lately. Said he had made mistakes. That maybe he had let greed take over. I stayed silent. He asked how Stratlight was doing. I lied and said, struggling. He sighed, almost sounding relieved. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. I think we should merge. Combine forces again. We could fix this. That word, we. He still thought I was the same guy who would say yes. But what I said next must have surprised him. I will think about it. I hung up. Reese was right. Revenge is not always about striking back. Sometimes, it is about letting the other guy believe he still has a chance. Because the next morning, I got an unexpected visit. Jake was at the office, smiling, holding a resume. He looked exactly the same. That was the first thing that hit me. Same smug grin, same perfect hair, same expensive jacket I once complimented during one of our launch meetings. Except now it looked heavier, like it was carrying the weight of everything he had done. Jake walked into the co-working space like he still owned every room he entered. Like none of this was awkward. Like we were still friends. He held out his hand. I did not take it. He laughed it off, said something about old habits. Told me he was impressed with what I had built. That he had been following my progress. Progress. As if I had been updating him like some proud little brother trying to make Big Bro proud. Like I had not watched him bleed me dry and toss me out like trash. He said LevelForge had taken a hit. Investors were pulling out. Clients were leaving. Rumors were flying. Something about trust issues. What a mystery, right? Then he did it. He pulled out a folder. Inside was a printed resume. His resume. I nearly laughed out loud. He started talking fast, spinning it like we had both made mistakes. That the startup world was rough, and we had let things get too personal. But he said he believed in me. In my vision. Said Stratlight could be something huge. And then the pitch came. I want to come work for you, he said. I can help. You know what I bring to the table. I looked at him for a long time. Not angry. Not even surprised anymore. I just let the silence stretch, waiting to see if he would flinch. He never did. He truly believed he could just walk back into my life, sit down at the table he had once flipped over, and start eating like nothing happened. I stood up, walked over to the window, took a deep breath, then turned around and looked him dead in the eye. And I said it as calmly as I had ever said anything in my life. We are not friends anymore. His face twitched. Just a little. But I saw it. I added, we never will be again. He opened his mouth, probably to argue, maybe to beg. I cut him off. You built something once. Then you burned it down for ego and money. Now you want to rebuild using someone else's bricks. I walked to the door. He did not follow. He just stood there, clutching that folder like it might still save him. I left him standing in my past and walked back into my future. But I was not done yet. Because what Jake did not know was that the biggest stage of all was still waiting. 3 weeks after I turned him down, the conference email landed in my inbox. TechRise Summit, keynote invitation. At first, I thought it was a scam. But then I saw the name, Angela Vu, one of the biggest names in startup media. She had been following Stratlight quietly, apparently impressed by how fast we had grown and the clients we were attracting. She wanted me on stage. 20 minutes. My story, my lessons. No scripts. Just the truth. Reese told me not to hold back. You earned this, he said. And the people who tried to bury you? They will be watching. So I said yes. The day of the summit, I walked into a sea of polished suits and lanyards, all carrying business cards and dreams. I had no speech written, just a few notes scribbled on the back of a coffee receipt. They introduced me as the founder of Stratlight, a builder, a survivor of betrayal, and a name you are going to remember. That stage was warm. The lights hit my face like the sun after a long, cold winter. I looked out over the crowd, and there he was, Jake, sitting in the third row. Of course he was. He could not resist a spotlight. Probably thought I would slip. Maybe even hoped I would thank him for inspiring me. Instead, I did what I came to do. I told the truth. I talked about what it meant to be stabbed in the back by someone you loved like a brother. I talked about building something from the rubble they left behind. I talked about watching people smile to your face while picking your pocket behind your back. I told them about LevelForge without ever saying Jake's name. And then I told them about Stratlight, about how it came from pain, but grew into purpose. People clapped, but not because it was polished. They clapped because it was real. After the talk, people lined up to shake my hand. Investors, journalists, founders who had been through their own kind of hell. And when I stepped off stage, Angela handed me a note. It just said, "That was the moment." I folded it up and stuck it in my pocket. But the moment was not over. Because when I turned the corner, guess who was waiting? Jake. Again. Only this time, he did not look smug. He looked desperate. He blocked my path like he had a right to be there. Gone was the slick confidence. His collar was wrinkled, his hair a little messy, like he had not slept much, or maybe like he knew his time was running out. Jake started talking fast. Too fast. Said he was proud of me. Said the speech was powerful. Then came the real reason he showed up. Turns out, one of his biggest clients had just pulled out mid-contract. Word had gotten around that the real brain behind the old operation was me. That the guy with the vision had moved on, while the one left behind had run the ship aground. He tried to spin it, of course. Said he was humbled now. Said maybe all of this had been a blessing in disguise. He told me we were meant to cross paths again. That we should talk about second chances. And then, he said it. I need a job. He actually said those words. Like they meant something. Like we were back in that garage with broken chairs and stale coffee, and not on opposite sides of a moral canyon he had dug himself. I did not get angry. I just watched him talk, watched him try to gather pity like loose change. Then I pulled out the note from Angela, the one that said, "That was the moment." I let my eyes drift down to those words. Then I looked back at him and smiled. Not out of spite. Out of closure. "You are good at pretending," I told him. "But this is not a show anymore." He opened his mouth again, but I shook my head. "You are not the victim. You are not the partner. And you sure as hell are not part of my team." He froze. And then, I gave it to him straight. "You had a seat at the table. You flipped it over and lit the house on fire. Now you want back in because it is snowing outside." For once, Jake had nothing to say. I could feel the weight of it sinking in. So I said one more thing, just to make sure he understood. "We are not friends anymore." And I meant it in the deepest, clearest way a person can mean anything. That line, it was not revenge. It was a tombstone. Word spread fast after the summit. Not because I went around bragging, hell no. I was done trying to prove anything to people who never cared to listen in the first place. But the industry? It talks. Investors talk. Founders talk. Engineers, interns, and even the janitors at the meetups, they all talk. And Jake? He could not outrun the whispers. Turns out, some of the folks in that audience had also been burned by him. Small things, maybe. Late payments, forgotten promises, shady NDAs. But once people smelled blood, they started digging deeper. And the truth started leaking. One blog post, then another. Then a full expose on a tech podcast titled, "The Rise and Fall of a Startup Grifter." They never said his name directly, but everyone knew. Meanwhile, Stratlight was catching fire in all the right ways. We landed a government contract. Reese brokered a meeting with a major logistics company. And one of the interns from our first batch, Ava, pitched a product feature that turned into an entire revenue stream. I gave her credit publicly, put her name on it, because that is what leaders do. But here is the thing no one tells you. Success feels different when it is born from betrayal. It does not taste like victory. It tastes like survival. And even in the best moments, when checks cleared, when awards came in, when people praised my resilience, there was always a part of me standing in that old office again, staring through the frosted glass, watching Jake erase me. Some scars do not scream. They just whisper. I spent a lot of time thinking about who I had become, about what I had lost, about whether I would ever let someone in that close again. Reese caught me once, zoning out after a client call. He waited a moment, then said something that stuck with me. "You know what Jake really wanted back?" I shook my head. "Not the job, not the money, not even your forgiveness." He leaned forward. "He wanted your shadow, because without it, no one remembered him." That hit me hard, because it was true. He had built his whole world around being next to me. And when I stepped out of the picture, he disappeared. About a year after the summit, I got a letter in the mail. Not an email, not a DM, a real envelope, handwritten, like something from another lifetime. It was from Jake. Inside was a single page. No return address. Just a message scribbled in his messy, familiar handwriting. You were always the better man. I see that now. I hope someday you will remember me as more than what I became. I read it once, then again. Then I folded it neatly, walked outside, and dropped it into the trash bin by the curb. Not out of anger, out of peace. Because I did remember him, just not the way he wanted. I remembered how he laughed with me on the first day we signed our office lease. How we shared frozen burritos and cracked dumb jokes at midnight, building wireframes with caffeine-stained fingers. I remembered the late nights and early mornings. The loyalty I thought was mutual, the trust one gave away for free. But I also remembered the way he looked me in the eye and lied. The way he took everything we built together and carved my name out like it was a typo. I remembered watching him stand in my office, holding a resume like a lost puppy, asking for a job at a company he once tried to destroy. That is the thing about betrayal. It does not just cut once. It carves through layers. It shapes who you become. But in my case, it also gave me something. Fire, clarity, and a story that ended the way it was meant to. A few weeks later, I was back at the co-working space, just visiting. I stood in that same glass room where Stratlight was born. Reese was there, of course. Ava too. The new team had doubled in size. We were building something again. Only this time, no backdoors. No hidden bank accounts. No shadows standing behind me with knives in their hands. Someone asked me once if I regretted ever trusting Jake. And you know what? I do not. Because without the fall, I would have never learned how to rise. And without him walking away, I would have never realized what I was capable of on my own. So when I tell this story, I end it the same way every time. Jake came back. He knocked. He asked. And I smiled. We are not friends anymore. Then I closed the door for good. Thanks for listening. If this hit you, drop a comment, and if you want more, hit subscribe.